Good evening. Today is Wednesday, April 16, 2025. It is 6 p.m. Welcome to our monthly board meeting. We'll go ahead and do a roll call. Vice President Legarreta,
Present.
Member Garay,
Here.
Member Marcus.
Present.
Secretary Montes is absent tonight, and myself, I am present. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, as the symbol of our friendship among united cultures. Okay, the first item up is the approval of the consent agenda. Before we do approve it, there are a couple of minor changes to the consent agenda. We are moving the Heart of the Bear Award. The powerlifting team was not able to be here tonight, so we're going to be removing that. Item G under new business. We're going to move that to the very end as the Miss Laura Castillo is going to be arriving slightly late. And then there is a typo on item H where it says travel expenses will be at the expense of each team, not teach. Want to make sure we get those correct. So the items on the consent agenda are the approval of the agenda, the approval of minutes, regular board meeting from 3/12/25, approval of March 2025 bills, and the approval of budget adjustment requests, transfers, cash requests, maintenance bars 27,552, 27,502, 11,000, 21,000, 31,100, 27,149, 31,703, and increase bar 11,000. Is there any discussion on any of these items or any clarification needed?
No.
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2, superintendent report.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. We've only got 2 items for the superintendent's report. The first is the general obligation bonds and final pricing book presented by RBC. And I believe we've got Kylie with us representing RBC. And so Kylie, can take it away.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. Good evening, President, members of the board. My name is Kaylee Weimerskirch with RBC Capital Markets, your municipal advisor. I'm here tonight for 2 reasons. For one, we'll talk about the 2025 bond sale and how that went. And then additionally, 2, underneath our action items is a resolution to go forward with the 2025 GO election. First we'll talk about the bond sale though. So without further ado, I'll begin to share my screen here. All right. So just jumping right into it, the district sold $450,000 of general obligation bonds with the New Mexico Finance Authority back on February 3rd. The bonds have closed. They closed back on March 14th, so funds are now available for the district to use on voter approved projects. The maturities only range from 2025 through 2026. So by 2026, this issuance will be fully paid off. Because it's so short, there is no optional call date for this issuance. The true interest cost came in at 1.25%, so that the total interest was only $2,705. So the next page we have here, we just have the payment schedule of this issuance. So as I had mentioned, it will fully mature by 2026. We're already maturing $405,000 of this issuance this upcoming August. We try to structure loans like this for interest cost savings throughout the loan. Additionally, the district did receive the NMFA's disadvantaged funding program. So we were able to price 10% of this loan, or $45,000, at a 0% coupon, which is reflected in that 2026 maturity there. Our next slide here just shows the history of the true interest costs on previous bond sales. We've had quite of a drop compared to the 2024 bond sale, which was 2.5%. Our 2025 bond sale, TIC, received 1.25%. It really is just a reflection of how inflation has kind of been cooling down since then. You know, at the end here too, I have a slide about election planning. You know, as I had mentioned, the district does have a resolution in front of them to go forward with the bond election of $3,750,000. So the 2025 sale was the last issuance of our 2021 voter authorization of $1.8 million. Since we no longer have any authorization left, we're scheduled to go back out to voters this upcoming November for $3,750,000. I know that that seems like quite a jump from our $1.8 million just 4 years ago. The reason why the election amount has increased is because your tax base has increased. It's been growing by about 2% year over year. And additionally, too, we've been able to pay off your debt very quickly, creating capacity for future elections. You know, overall, our plan is still to maintain your debt service tax rate at $10.31, and that is what determined the election amount of $3,750,000. You know, there is a market update in the back, but I'll stop there and kind of see if anyone has any questions for me regarding the 2025 bond sale or the district's wider plan of finance.
I don't believe we have any questions at this time.
Thank you. I will remain on the line as we approach the approval of the election resolution so that I can walk the board through some of the terms of that resolution and be present in case there's any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is iReady data that I wanted to present. This is data, and Andrew, if we can get it up there. Yep. Okay. One of the things that we've been talking about is there seems to be this cliff that happens between the elementary schools and Rio Grande. So from second grade to third grade, we see the same kind of drops, you know, from fifth to sixth and then eighth to ninth. And so one of the things that as we have been in discussion is, you know, we know that iStation and IMASA are not the same type, you know, one's assessing the standards, one's assessing literacy and literacy readiness. And so one of the things that we've done to try to develop some consistency and to measure consistency across the grade levels, as you know, we currently use iReady in grades 3 through 8. But we want to include now K through K1 and 2 so that we can see over a longer period of time how the kids are doing. And so we did purchase iReady to be able to administer for the first round. We'll only get two sessions in, but they did the diagnostic, and that's what is reflected here. And then they'll do the end of year, so EOY, and like everybody else is going to be doing. And so let's go ahead and get started. So the first slide is, and I broke them up by Garfield and a grade level between Garfield and Hatch Elementary, just so that we can see across, you know, what's happening across the grade levels. And so one of the things that you're going to see as we go through all these slides is that I'm happy to report that none of our kids, K1 and 2, are identified at level 1. And so that's quite an accomplishment. That's saying a lot. And the majority of our kids are at level 3 and above. And so you'll see this reflected in both reading and in math. And so this is kinder at Garfield. Okay, and you can see that levels 4 and 5, which is indicates proficiency, is they're at a very high rate in reading and also in math. So they're doing really, really well. And just stop me if you have any questions as I move along. This is a Hatch Elementary kinder, and so you can see no kids in levels 1 and 2. Everything is 3 and above, and so in really good position to move. And it'll be interesting to see what happens between now and the end of the year. But this is kinder at Hatch Elementary. This is first grade at Garfield. And first grade tends to be, I don't know, for what's been interesting looking at the data, and you'll see it in the next slide, is they're not the same as what we see in kinder and even in second grade. And so I'm not sure what's going on with that, but the majority of our kids are at level 3 in first grade. And you'll see that here reflected here as well. And so the proficiency levels aren't as high, but level 3 is where they're really positioned to be able to move over to the right. This is second grade?
A quick question.
Yes, sir.
Does this represent kids taking that in L1 or is it just both English and Spanish together?
It's English and Spanish, right?
Together mixed?
Luis?
It's L1.
It's L1.
Okay, so this is all the kids,
Yeah.
all first graders. with
Right.
the- Okay.
Right. It's reflective of all the kids that
Okay.
assessed. Yes,
All
sir. Okay, and here's second grade. Okay, again, I'm really pleased to see that we don't have any at the very bottom at level 1. And here's Hatch Elementary. Okay. So as I stated, all of them, I mean, the majority of our kids are sitting at level 4. And so celebrations, but also room for moving over to the right. And so I think they're positioned to do really well. As the years move on, we'll be able to track now from, second grade to third grade and see what's happening there. And then have a better historical perspective of performance, as they move across the grade levels. Okay. And so that is all I have with data. Any questions?
Good.
All right, no questions. Thank you, Mike. Item number 3, limited public comment. We do have public comment today from Father Juan Torres from our Lord of Mercy. Heard.
Evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
We don't have much to say, just Dora wanted to talk a lot.
Yes.
Don't add much time here. We just wanted to give thanks for the year was up. We really feel like we've been able to make a good relationship, partnership, to feel like we're part of this community together in so many different ways. And especially Mr. Chavez, I know you worked really hard to just open doors. And anytime I had a question, you're at least like, okay, maybe we can do this, maybe we can't. Especially out there in rental or buses. I really think the parents see that, our parents here at the church and everyone that we have there has this beautiful collaboration as well. And we just want to make sure we thank you and also Ms. Oldine. Worked really hard to let us be present there, to just be with the kids, whoever wants to be there, whoever doesn't, but just be present so we can work together in those pieces. So Dora and I and the whole community, we're just really grateful. I want to thank the school board for making that possible for all those different aspects, little or large. And we just want to say thanks. So we did have one of the moms wanted to bake you guys a cake. So we have a cake in the back and then a little present in the card. So just wanted to thank you guys for all of your work this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. I just want to mention that just for the board's information, Father Ivan came to me several months ago and said, "Hey, do you think we'd be able to purchase one of the buses that go out to auction?" And I said, "Well, let's see what we could do." And so I had mentioned to him, I said, "Well, if you purchase it, you still have all the expense of upkeep and insurance and all that. I said, why don't you just contract your, with us, with our transportation and then just pay for, the expense of fuel and then the drivers and we can work it that way. And so they took advantage of that. And so we've been able to provide busing for a couple of their events. And so Eduardo's, I got to give credit to Eduardo, and I don't know if he's here. I don't see him here. But Eduardo's done a really good job of making that happen for us. And thank you so much. Thank you.
And if ever it is possible to do a local auction, and then whatever goods the school have, stay with farmers here or parents here or churches here, local auctions, keep it from going to Wisconsin or wherever else.
There you go.
Throwing that out is a possibility.
There you go.
So it's been a good partnership. And then he also he approached me and approached Miss O'Gean as well and said, can I just go hang out at lunchtime at the school? And I said, absolutely, and so his presence there has just made a really, really positive impact on kids. And so we just want to thank him for the partnerships, as he mentioned, the partnerships that we've been able to develop, between the church and the schools. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, item number 4, new business. First item up for is the consideration of the approval and adoption of the NMSB policy advisories 246 through 260. This is the second reading, so this is what we're approving, correct?
Yes, correct.
Are there any questions or is there any discussion about any of the policy advisories that were given to us? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded to approve item A. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of the school calendar, school year 2025 to 2026.
Before we present the calendars and you know, what we put forth to the board for consideration for approval is we want to also acknowledge Ray, your suggestion of also considering a 4-day week. And one of the things that we've done is we've come together as an administrative team, really talked about what are the pros and cons. I also reached out to our legal consultant. And the consensus was the same, and that is it's way too there's not enough time to really prepare for a 4-day week. And there's a lot of things there's a lot of pros and cons that we have to consider with that. Everything from instruction, the curriculum maps, and even our workers, cutting some of our workers, specifically our bus drivers and our food service workers, you know, being cut 20% of their hours over the course of the week. And so nobody is opposed to looking into or moving in that direction, but what everybody has requested is time to really study it, time to go visit other districts, time to just see, you know, what are all the things that we're looking at, you know, what are the pros? We know what the pros are, but the cons, like how do we work through those pieces? And working through those pieces is really what's going to take a lot of time. And that was the consensus from the group was let's take some time to really study it. And if it is the board's wish, you know, for next year, you know, let's take a year to really study it. And so again, I just want to emphasize that the consensus was not to not have the 4-day. It's just to really take time to study it. And so so with that, we do have 2 calendars. These were the original calendars that well, there were calendars that we worked through because even when we presented the calendars last month, we still didn't have direction from PD. Well, I think we got it at 5 o'clock that evening of our board meeting. And so there's some things like K-12 plus that direction that we were given. And what we were able to determine is that it made no sense for us to do K-12 plus because of the additional requirements that were in there. So we had to increase the calendar by 5 days to just get 3 days of credit. I know I'm not having the exact numbers, but we had to increase the number of days more than what we were going to get funding for. And it just didn't make sense because of the new requirements. And so we took the K-12 plus days out. And as you know, over the last 2 years, we've been doing 5 extra days. And so we pulled those out. And so that gave us a little more flexibility with the calendar. The other thing that we wanted to hold true is the majority of our staff really appreciated the 3 weeks at Christmas time. And so we wanted to honor that in there and put it in there as well. And so I know I'm talking, you know, with just some generalities, but Mr. Fernie Sanchez is the one that has led the charge with this and has a lot more information and details that he can go over. So Fernie.
Good evening, Mr. Chavez. Board. Good evening, Mr. Chavez, President Gonzalez and board. Yeah, this was a very big undertaking trying to get a grasp on everything. And then the last minute, we had some calendars that we'd been working on. The PD came out with different requirements. Actually, what happened was they had separated what normally would go into, I believe, House Bill 2. They took it out and tried to pass it as its own set. House Bill 65, I think, and then it did not pass. So what happens is it reverted back to some older language, which took out some requirements that we had been held to before on hours. From, I think, a calendar from 4 years ago. Was that the one that you were being held to, Mr. Chavez? The
22, 23.
22, 23. So all that came out. We did do some surveying to go when we started this process. And the biggest thing we got out of that was everybody wanted the 3 weeks at Christmas. That was I think it was over 70%, almost 75%, and that included staff, students, and community members. So that being kind of one of the biggest things that we felt like we had to stay true if we asked those opinions and that input that we wanted to keep to. Then the board asked for us to look at a 4-day week. We did. I joke that and it's not a joke. I think it's 32 different calendars I have made up from different varieties. We reached out. I read a ton of articles, found out that there's some surprises with a 4-day calendar, but the biggest one is implementation. Implementation for that, because there's some things that happen when you implement a 4-day calendar that you need to be prepared for, especially within the community, and certain people in your district, your food workers and your bus drivers will actually see a 20% reduction. No one's opposed to it, but things like daycare on Fridays, things like what do we do on those days? Those all became things that we didn't know what answers to. Our daycare that we provided to school, the length of days became long. Elementary was going to add something like an hour and 10 minutes a day to their current day. So no one was opposed to it. We just didn't have answers to the questions that come with that, with moving to a 4-day. And I think I was sitting in the office one day, Vicente said, what did he call it? It would be nice to have a feasibility study for us here and how we could work that in, but would we be having enough time now? And the answer is, we're at the end, and just not enough time to maybe get that, present that, have a first reading, then have a second reading, and then do that whole process again on a big change. So I've got it. I'm willing to answer any questions you guys have for me. I feel like I've learned a lot through this process. It's been a great process for me, and I know we sent out opinions, and I tried to take in every opinion that was given to me, and put any personal preference aside.
So when you guys polled, you just polled the administrators, you didn't poll the teachers, you didn't poll the community?
We worked with all the administrative team. Yes.
So we don't know how
everybody.
the community or anyone else feels
No.
about it, just the administrators?
Yeah.
I, for one, feel like we needed to get the community's opinion on this. That's my opinion, I guess.
Are you talking about for a 4-day
For a
calendar?
4-day.
Yeah, we did not present a 4-day to anybody at the time. I know we did the surveys early on. Again, that was before it was ever suggested, I believe, at the last board meeting about a 4-day calendar.
What is the reason for a 4-day? What is
Like-
not working? The 5 days, we don't have enough time. Now you want to go to 4?
And my thing too, when you think about a 4-day week, and I know Fridays, oh, well, maybe teachers, we won't have to get the subs, and that may save some money, but on Fridays, half the offices are closed on Fridays now, so will teachers start taking Thursdays off? So they're only 3 days out of the week. I don't know. Those are things that stop and think of. A lot of places are closed on Friday, so we would hope teachers would take that Friday to take care of personal business, but a lot of businesses are closed on Fridays or half day. So yeah, I don't know what
And then the little kids, all the elementary kids, their attention span is hard enough to get through a regular day. Now you're wanting them to go longer in a day. Are you going to give them a nap during the daytime?
I'm a very honest person with some of the stuff, I think the biggest surprise to me was that there's not a decrease in academic data. There's not a big increase or decrease. Don't hardly
Increase,
find
decrease.
any decrease. There are some, and if you guys don't mind, I'm going to share some of those articles with you.
I did speak with Michael Corey from Coray Public Schools, and that was one of his big concerns is, as you know, they are a 4-day week. Well, they're considered a 5-day, but they try to do as close to a 4-day as possible. But that was his biggest concern. He said, secondary kids, they can handle it. little kids, he said they struggle to get through the day. Especially your kindergartners, first graders, your littles, is what he said. He said, that's probably the biggest drawback that he sees, over in Cobre.
So and I'd like I said, the biggest decrease actually happens in your highest achieving students, which may be a surprise to some people, but it's actually your highest achieving students. The articles, I can send you the email so that you can actually just click on each link, because I just put basically the abstract from each. There's not like a thing, but the one thing I didn't find was big increases in student performance in a 4-day week. They don't report increases. They just say, hey, there's no big difference. They maintain where they're at.
And I know some districts say for the 4-day week, you can attract more employees, but what type of work ethic is that if they're looking just to come for a 4-day week? In my opinion, I mean, I know that's another.
I don't think
It's
they would
like-
even come to Hatch either way.
Staff morale does go
Yeah.
up, and that's
Yeah, that's
reported
one of the
across the
big one,
board.
right?
Staff morale goes up, but staff retention does not.
Oh, really?
That's a very odd, I
Wow.
told Mr. Chavez, reading that's only structured in like 4 articles. There's about 13 articles I read, trying to get as much data. I was, at first, I'll be honest with you, I was like, no way a 4-day. And then after reading the material, I told Ms. Olguin, I was like, kind of even now. To me, one isn't necessarily better than the other. You do see growth more in 5-day weeks. You don't see as much growth in 4 days, but you do sometimes see a little minimal growth. And that's from data, guys. That's from people that study that. That's from people that are studying that and bringing in the thing. The hardest part, though, is we keep talking about growth. I want to go with a system that shows the most potential for growth. And I wasn't able to necessarily find that in a 4-day week, the potential for growth. There were some misconceptions I had with a 4-day week. And that's why the articles I shared with you, they don't say anything negative. They just say, hey, here's what the data says. And some of them say, hey, there's these things. Discipline goes down a little bit. Attendance stays about the same. Those kids that miss are going to miss. You would think there'd be this big improvement with attendance, but only one of the 13 articles actually says there's a positive, and they're studying specific schools. That's why I think maybe the idea of doing it and trying to rush into it means that we need to really consider all the other parts of the puzzle. On that sheet, you'll see the parameters, and then you'll see considerations. There was a lot of things in there to consider as we went through it. The biggest things that we talked about was the quality of life, I think is the way we say it. The quality of life for our bus drivers and food workers. When you discuss with them going to 4-day, they get their pay cut 20% a week. There's no way around it. Unless we're going to pick up that additional cost that comes from federal funding. We talked to Mike at SFE, and he said, guys, we're just going to have to cut them 20%. So those people are our lowest paid employees would be the most affected.
And then you lose them because they need that 20%.
I-
And then say the 4-day doesn't work after 1 year, then you try to hire people back and they're like, I already got a better looking job.
Yeah,
You know,
I didn't see any data on anything like that. And again, that's not what I was looking at. Some other things that we started to consider was daycare. What happens on Friday for all those families at work? The one thing I did read that made the most sense to me was 4 days are great for families, and they're increasing the family time in solid, stable homes that also have a 4-day work week. And I just don't know many of our families that have 4-day work weeks. That becomes the next issue. And so those were things. We offer 2 less meals a week to kids because now you're not feeding them on Fridays. You're offering 1 day less of SEL services to all our students that need it. That was from a counselor. So
Going back to the meals, one of the things that struck me was when we met with SFE to consider this, one of the things that they gave us to kind of get an idea of the impact was how many lunches we served during the summertime. And in the summertime, help me with that figure, it's about 700 lunches. So we've got about 700 kids that rely on lunches in the summertime. And so he said, you can use that number to say, you've got at least 700 kids on a
need it,
Friday
really, really
that
need
are
it.
not going to have that meal. And so that kind of struck me. I hadn't thought of it like that, but it is 1 less meal. It's actually two meals because they get breakfast and lunch. But you can equate it to the summer lunch program and the impact that that has.
And I think the thing about it, those are things that we would need to find out how to meet those needs. It's not a no, it's the, hey, let's do that feasibility study. Can we meet all those other needs that would come with a 4-day calendar? And you're right, like if you ask high school kids, you ask any kid, you want to go to school just 4 days a week? I think we know the answer is going to be
Yeah.
an
you wouldn't
overwhelming
ask a
yes.
kid.
And it may want to work, but is that what happens after the 4th day? What happens on day 5? And whether we want to like to admit that or not, we are the biggest daycare provider in the area. And what do those kids do? That's why we get almost 100 kids in the summer program that we run, the summer sports program. That's why we get all those people coming to eat. We provide all these services. And so I've kind of, because like I say, I'm kind of one way or another that either calendar works, but I think we need to make sure we have all these things answered and planned out before we necessarily push to that right now in 2 months. I don't know how that would affect all our kids. I don't know.
You also need to take into consideration middle school sports, right? You're
All sports.
elongating, well, yeah, but they're younger,
Yeah.
is why I'm thinking. You're elongating the day, which means you're elongating the practice. And then if he or she lives and gets the last drop off, right? So she's getting home, say the bus leaves practice at 6 and she's the last drop off, which is 45 minutes later. The parents are going to say, what? You're not playing. You're getting home too late. You're out. So it affects everybody. After school programs as well.
And again, I think there's answers to those questions. I think there's a way to get there. I think if that's really the direction, I think we could find a way to make it work. I think we could find a way to work with scheduling and finding a way with groups on when they practice or what time or busing or figuring that. I think we can. I just think trying to do that in, 2.5 months, I don't know if, and I don't know how that would affect funding. Eduardo talked about that. We did discuss this with Eduardo and he discussed like, hey, it's hard enough July 1 with the current situation. You switch to 4-day, like, I don't, you know what I mean? All those people that we've talked to.
Still goes back to what I was saying, why? Yeah,
No,
I just want to know
What
why.
the
Like,
bottom line, what is the reason?
Yeah, the why. Yeah, I mean,
Who-
yeah. So
Yeah, I know Ray brought it up. What is the reasoning for going to a 4-day? Bottom line.
Choice. Choice for the community. Is this something that the community wants?
And you're gonna ask adults? When.
Are adults not the
We are here
community?
for our kids.
Are adults not the community?
Yes, but we're here
So then
for
I
our
have to ask
teacher
the adults, don't I?
kids.
Because they are the community.
Can I say something? When we looked at like the 4-day week and when we would have to start, one thing that came to mind was when we have the Power School rollover and how long that takes and being able to print out schedules and that kind of thing. It scared me to think that we wouldn't have enough time to prepare for the kids to come because there's a lot of things we have to do at the end of the year before we can start the new year. So I think the date was somewhere around July 13th. And usually we would love it if we could roll over July 1st and be able to start making sure kids were scheduled correctly and everything. But we know we never really get to roll over July 1st because we're still fixing stuff and waiting on PED. So then that would be hard for high school to start that early and ensure that everything was in place and ready to go that quickly.
I was really that great for next year, but I'm thinking of the advantages and the community.
Or have town hall meetings. We gotta bring the community in to give the input. Because again, even say a teacher, if a teacher says, yeah, let's go to a 4-day week, but then she's got 5 kids in the school. And then she still has to work on Friday, who's gonna babysit those kids? Then she's gonna say, well, I can't come in to work on Friday because I have to babysit my kids. How is that fair to the other teachers?
Well, that's where it gets complicated, right? That's
Yeah.
where I've been kind of discussing Do you go to
Right.
410s? Do you go to 4.9s? Do you
And
go to,
And
you
if
start
look at
adding all
Mondays
these,
or Fridays, like I know some do Mondays, some do Fridays, like.
some districts do not an alternating, they just, wherever there's a holiday, they take that at the week. Cause a 4-day does not mean you have to have the same day off. It just means you can only go a maximum of 4 days in a week.
Different days.
Yeah, and
That
so-
would cause for daycare, that would throw a wrench in everything. because
Right?
I don't.
Because it's not scheduled.
Oh, yeah, that's-
And then there's a lot of questions. It's length of day. You're right. We can add days and it shortens the length of day a little bit. So you can do anything. And that's one thing when we talked to the admin, who said, it's good, guys, we could do anything. But how well will we be prepared when we switch to that? And I think the biggest question became not wanting to do a 4-day, but are we in a position right now to really by mid-July, or really, to be honest with you, in the next month, be ready to roll that out so that everybody can start preparing for it? And are we giving families enough notice? And we can talk about the input, but I want to say there was 130 adult community members input when we put that out for people to answer. Is that really a great representation of the entire community? Did we hit all the people that this may affect more than it may not? And that's always a question. When you do something electronically, or you have a meeting here at 4 o'clock after school, do we give enough people enough time to get here? Do we advertise it enough? Do people feel comfortable enough to come and voice their concerns? If you do it online, well, then you got to have people that are tech savvy, that are comfortable using the phones. Like, so you're pulling from small pools of data. We're not pulling from these huge. It's easier for our teachers and it's easier for our students to answer. But for as far as a community, I mean, still like us to find better ways to reach out to bigger groups of parents.
Is there any further discussion? This item is up for consideration, so if there's a calendar that,
There is a recommendation
Okay.
that we have, and so the recommendation after talking to staff members is the one that starts school for students on August 4th.
So
So
the
the
first one or the
latest
second one?
start?
It's the one that says 3.0 latest start.
3.0.
Yeah.
do we have a motion?
I would move that we adopt the 3.0 latest start, if that's what.
We have a second.
That's what the
Yeah,
teachers,
Yeah.
okay, second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Myself, no. Item C, approval of the consider approval. No, I'm sorry, item, which is the calendar that passed?
Calendar was the 3.0 latest start.
3.0 latest start. Yes, passed, okay. Item C, consider approval of the 2024 audit.
I don't see high now there. Let me go ahead and come back to that.
Yes, we can come back to it. So we will move item C down to the end. Item D, consider approval of the disposition of property resolution.
We do have a couple of items that we would like to remove from our inventory, and I believe they're the 2 vehicles. One is, well, actually, they're both pickups, right? They're both the pickups, and we can't get parts for these pickups.
They don't run at all at all?
I didn't
Well,
realize
one
that-
runs, but
that-
unsafely, like, you know, one doesn't run at all. It's been in the shop, over with Ronnie. And he has tried and tried and tried, to get parts with it. He's, had to go to junkyards. And he just can't get it going. And so, we just need and that's the GMC. The Dodge operates, but it has an issue with braking. And so it's not safe. And so it's best for us to just, remove them from our inventory. We have purchased a couple of pickups. And I don't know if that's a straight, replacement for these, but we do have 2 more pickups that we did purchase last month. So my recommendation is for approval for removal from our inventory.
So do we have a motion to consider approval of the disposition of property resolution?
So moved.
Seconded.
Has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item E, consider,
Francisco's on if you want.
oh, he's on now? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move back to the consider approval of the 2024 audit.
Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay, perfect. Awesome. I am going to, is it okay if I share my screen?
Andrew, is he able to do that?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, can you guys, oh, share. Are you guys able to see the report?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going ahead and I'll go ahead and start. Thank you everyone for letting me present the 2024 financial statements report for Hatch Valley Public Schools. My name is Francisco Teran, and I am with Clifton Larson Allen LLP. We are based, so our office is located in Albuquerque. CLA, we have several offices throughout the U.S., but the one here in New Mexico is located in Albuquerque. I want to start off by saying thank you to the governing board for allowing us to perform the 2024 audit. It was a pleasure working with Sheila and her team. We were out there for a couple days. I think we did 2 trips out there, one for interim and one for final. Yeah, it was, everything went by really smooth. Sheila was very well prepared for us when we arrived on site, and it just made the audit process a lot easier for the audit team. I am going to go through mainly just the important sections of the audit report. The first one on here, so right after the table of contents and the official roster, we have the independent auditors report. And so this here is the most important part of the report. So this will give your readers, it will let your readers know the opinion that was given out. And I am pleased to report that for fiscal year 2024, our opinion was unmodified. In other words, it was clean. This is the highest level of opinion that we are able to put on our report. So we were very pleased with the results of the audit. And whenever you guys apply for any sort of federal grants, any new debt, this is what those agencies will be looking at. They look at the opinion on the report. Other than that, they'll look at the findings, they'll look at the balance sheet and the income statement to see how healthy the school is, and whether there is enough money in there to continue operating. But the most important thing is the opinion on the report. So if you guys, I'm not sure if you guys have a printed version of the financials, but if you guys turn over to page, it is going to be page number 11. This is the balance sheet. And so I'm going to go over some of the balances on here, the most important ones. First one is cash at the end of the year. And this is for all of your funds, right? This is your general fund. This is your bonds, your capital outlay, your debt. And then your other government, this is all of the other funds, and by funds I mean all of the other programs, right? So sometimes the different grants, and it includes your activity accounts on there as well. And so at the end of the year, total cash balance for the school was sitting at 13.7 million in comparison to last year, which was sitting at 7.9. So very good. The school has a very healthy cash account. This 13 million though, however, is not all available funds for spending, right? So you have out of here, you still have payroll that got paid out throughout the summer. There were other things that where money was set aside for, like, activity accounts, any debt payments, any invoices that were outstanding that had not been yet paid for, any POs that were open but had not been fulfilled yet. So there's, this balance really isn't the actual balance, right? As of the end of the year. Well, I mean, it was, but there could be stuff that's outstanding that hadn't been covered yet. Let's see here. Next up on here is going to be your property taxes receivable. This is very similar to last year. Last year we were sitting at 277,000. It's 269,000 this year. Intergovernmental receivables. These are mainly outstanding RFRs. So at the end of the year, there was about $1 million in outstanding RFRs that had not been received yet. Last year's balance was 3.5. This has a lot to do with timing. So for example, if the school requested RFRs close to the end of the year and those RFRs hadn't been yet, been received by the school, that money is sitting in here, or, the outstanding, this is basically what it is. And so last year's balance for intergovernmental receivables was 3.5 million. And so that's why there was that cash balance at the end of the year was lower last year, because of the larger AR balance on there. And then we have smaller, like, AR receivables of about 11,000, inventory of about 4,000, and then due from other funds of about the balance on there is 710,000. And you can see on here that the due from other funds is the very same amount that's sitting in the due to other funds. So basically at the end of the year, and I'll go through this real quick. So at the end of the year, there might be funds out there that had a negative cash balance. And so the general fund will let those funds borrow money. And the reason for the, for the negative account or cash balances is that the school might have spent money related to a grant, and so they haven't received the reimbursement yet. And so because of that, they have a negative cash balance. So once they receive that reimbursement from PD, after they submit it, they'll receive the money, and then the cash account will go back to zero. And so, but for financial statement purposes, we're not allowed to show a negative cash balance. And so in the meantime, the general fund will let those funds borrow money in the meantime. And so once those funds receive, the reimbursement, the money basically gets transferred over back to the general account. If you turn over to page 13, this is your statement of revenues and expenses. And so total revenues did go up this year by about 1.5 million in comparison to the prior year. The expenditures also did go up, not as much. Expenditures increased by about roughly under 400,000. So, very good for the school, right? Revenues are increasing, expenditures went up as well, but not as much. Leaves some extra money in the bank. Let's see here. And this is a summary basically of all of the different, it's combined, right? It has all of the balances combined. And so if you keep scrolling down through here, you will have, it'll break out it'll have a breakout of the balances by fund or by grant. So I am going to scroll down to page, let me see here. This is page 75. And so prior to page 75, it'll have a list of all of the accounts. So if you guys were ever wondering what each one of these accounts is for, just because the title, like food service, you could tell what that's for. For example, like Title I or Entitlement Idea B. If you guys ever, had questions or wondered what this fund is for, there's a list of all of the funds, and it'll have the number on there, the fund number, and then it'll have a brief description of what that fund or that the grant is for. And the reason why I call them funds and grants is the school keeps track of all of the grants by fund. And so page 75 through page I believe it's through page 79 will have this one has all of the balances broken out by fund. And so on here, these amounts at the very end will tie back to the summary at the beginning. And so let's see here. So yeah, so all of these, I'm trying to see where it has the totals for the special revenue. So and the funds are broken out into categories. Majority of the funds are special revenue funds, and then we have capital project funds. So the totals for all of the funds will tie back to the first schedule that was at the beginning of the financials. And then following this will be the combining statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. So this is basically the same thing except for your revenue and expenditure accounts. Let's see here. So page 88 is your budget to actuals. So this one here, we presented the budget to actuals for the major funds. This year, I believe we had 5 different major funds. And so we present the amounts that were budgeted, the original amount, the final amount that was budgeted as of the end of the year, and then actual amounts. So these are, actual revenue amounts and actual expenditure amounts for these accounts. We did have one fund, and I believe which one was it? There was one fund that did exceed the, we had one fund where the actuals exceeded and it was this one here. So fund 15,200, which is the local revenue operational account. This account, so the actual expenditures as of the end of the year exceeded the budgeted amount of $400 by $18. And so this triggered an automatic finding for the district. And we'll go over that when we go over the 2 findings during the year. Let's see here. Page 95 will have your cash reconciliation. So this one will have your cash that was sitting in the bank account as of June 30th. And then on there, we will add any outstanding deposits that were in transit as of, the end of the year. And then we will subtract any outstanding payments. And then that will get us our actual cash balance for the end of the year. Does anyone have any questions so far?
No.
Okay, perfect. And I normally don't go through the balances. I think we normally just go through the report, the opinion, and then the findings, but just wanted to go over, the balances and just let everyone know that, the school is sitting in a, has a really good, healthy account balance. So page 99 is this is our independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting and also on compliance and other matters. So this report here this is the report that we'll discuss that, we did have two findings. Both findings were considered other matters. So there's different types of findings. We have significant deficiencies, we have other matters, we have and material weaknesses. So other matters is the lowest type of a finding that you can have, followed by significant deficiencies and then material weaknesses. And so during the year, we did note that there were two findings that we reported as other matters. It's 2024-001 and 2024-002. And then page 102, this is our report on compliance for each major federal program. There were two programs that we tested during the year, and we have issued a clean opinion on the federal programs that we tested. Page 105 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this one here will have all of your federal programs by, it'll break it out by each grant and then the total amount expended during the year. And so as you can see here, the largest program on here was related to COVID. And then followed by the National School Lunch Program. And so these two programs were actually the two programs that we tested during the year, since we are required to. So if a program's expenditures exceed 750,000 during the year, and the program has not been tested in the last 2 years, we are required to perform a single audit over that program. And so this year we had two programs, the National School Lunch Program, and then COVID-19. As you can see on here, Title I did exceed that 750,000. However, we did test Title I in 2023. Therefore, it was not subject to a single audit this year. So the schedule of findings and question costs. This is a summary of the audit results. And so as you can see on here, on the financial statements, we issued an unmodified opinion. We had no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and non-compliant material to the financial statements noted. For the federal awards, we also did not have any material weaknesses that were noted, no significant deficiencies identified, and the opinion that we issued on the report was unmodified. There were also no findings disclosed that were required to be reported in accordance with 2 CFR. And so again, we did have two findings. Those two findings were other matters. However, they're very small findings to where they don't make it on this report here. And then the two programs that we tested again were, first one was the child nutrition cluster, and then the COVID funding that the school received.
Can you discuss what the two findings were?
Yes.
You know what they were?
So next up is the findings here. So we'll go over the first one. The first finding, as I had mentioned earlier, was related to the budget. So the district had expenditures for one of the functions where the actual expenditures exceeded budgetary authority for the local revenue operational fund, which was a major fund by $18. And, unfortunately on this one, there's no, it could have been $1,000, 100,000, right? However, as soon as you guys go over the budget, it just automatically triggers a finding. And this is, so New Mexico statute related to school districts require that schools follow their budget. And so the amount doesn't really matter. And so this, very small, wasn't a lot. And I think it did happen a couple years ago where it was, very similar. And Sheila did, increase the budget. And I think this was one of those situations where the amount that was received just, or that was expended, it was just slightly over what was budgeted. And I believe Sheila did increase her budget for this year, so this finding should be resolved during fiscal year 2025, correct, Sheila?
Yes, that's right. I did have a management response that, so this is county collection taxes on our ad valorem. So when we receive county tax, we pay a fee. That fee is based on the amount of tax that we receive. And that's based on sales in the county. So that's not something we can project. We estimate that we are allowed to budget 1% of whatever they calculate in August for next year in county collection tax costs in that line. It's one liner in the function. So normally in operational, you've got 100 lines. And if there's a little more in one, a little less in the other, the function is still positive. This is a one and done. So when we got our June taxes in, the 1% was $18 more than the remaining of the balance, and you cannot submit a budget adjustment after June 30th.
It really is a moving target. It's hard to, so
And we
miss it by
looked at it, and
$18. That's really not a whole lot.
so I kicked myself when I saw it, but there was nothing I could do about it when we saw it.
And we do see these types of findings very often, where it happens, not to just school districts, but we've had other, like water authorities, other smaller districts, and, even municipalities where, they've budgeted a certain amount, and when they receive the total revenue and they have to create that, the expenditure line item for any fees and stuff, it puts them slightly over that amount. I think we had a higher education institution where this happened to last year, and so it's just one of those things where they haven't, I'm sure there's stuff that maybe the state could do to try to change the statutes, right, to where it would allow a school to budget a little more, or not ding them, right, if they go over, if a certain, if it's below like a certain amount. So the second, does anyone have any questions over the first finding?
No, we have none.
Okay. So finding 2024-002, late submission of data collection form. So this finding, the district did not submit an annual data collection form for the year ended June 30, 2023 to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse by the due date of March 31st, 2024. And so so all entities, right, all government agencies and even nonprofits, so anyone who has a single audit is required to submit a data collection form. So this is basically a summary of the audit results, along with it's like a detailed report that gets submitted to the Federal Federal Audit Clearinghouse. This is due 9 months after fiscal year end, and so 9 months after this was March 31st, and we normally prepare the schedule that gets submitted along with the financial statements on behalf of the district. And so the district will review the form, and it gets certified by both the auditor and the auditee, or the school district, and then it gets submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. And so this form was not submitted by the due date, and we did take blame on this because we Sheila and I had spoken about it. I think it was, so normally what the it's ultimately the school's responsibility to submit it, but we do prepare it for them, and so we also took blame into this finding here. We should have had some sort of calendar reminder or something that to remind us that it needed to be submitted by March 31st. And so this form has been submitted, so this finding will be cleared for fiscal year 2025. And actually the form for fiscal year 2024 has also been submitted, which is due by March 31st. We submitted this, I think we submitted it like, it was like mid-March. So as soon as the Office of the State Auditor released the final report, we went ahead and prepared the form and sent it over to Sheila to certify. Our audit partner, Jaime, certified it, and then it got submitted as well. So 2024 is good to go as well.
I have a question about that real quick.
Yes.
It says under effect as a result, the district does not qualify as low risk auditee in accordance with the uniform guidance. What does that mean for us?
So basically, when and I'll scroll up over here to the summary of audit results, and you can see on here at the very bottom, it has a question, right? Auditee qualified as low risk auditee. No. And so what this does is it will increase the amount that needs to be tested. So when it's mainly for purposes of whoever the auditor is, whenever they do their risk analysis for the major programs that need to be tested, the coverage amount is increased. So normally, if you guys are considered low risk, the auditors have to test 25% of your CIFA, or of that federal expenditure schedule. So if one program gives them enough coverage, so for example, if total federal expenditures were 10 million, right? You only have to test 2.5 million. So if there's one program that had 3 million, that's all you have to test, just one program, and that's enough, right? If you're considered high risk or not low risk, that percentage increases to 40%. And so the auditors, instead of having to just look at or test 25% of the CIFA, they are now required to test 40% of it. So this could mean having to test two programs instead of one. But other than that, there's not really any other repercussions. Like, it's not going to affect any funding. It's not going to reduce any funding. It's not going to have, your grant agencies calling you about, about
testing more require more work from the auditor? Or it's the same cost for doing 25% compared to 40%?
So when an auditor bills for a single audit, they have a set amount, and it doesn't really matter if there's a single audit required, there's a flat fee for that amount. It doesn't really matter if it's, I think there was one year where we had 3 major programs, and then we've had a lot of years where we've only had 1 or 2 major programs. And so normally, So to answer your question, no, it shouldn't cost you more. It will create more work for the auditor, right? So for example, if they have to test another program, right, it means having to select some more samples, having to look at additional reports to make sure that that program is in compliance. But as far as cost, the fees are set for a single audit. It's a flat fee. It doesn't matter if it's one program, two programs, three programs, or four programs. Because at the time, whenever an auditor submits a quote, they really don't know what the programs or the number of programs that need to be tested until they do an analysis over that CIFA. And so once that they analyze the CIFA, they then determine if one program is enough or if it's going to require more than one program. Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Perfect. And so we'll move on to the let's see here. So we'll go over financial statement findings. No matters were reported, and then findings and question costs over major federal programs. There were none reported. And then finally, we have let's see here. And then finally, the status of prior year findings. In the prior year, we did have one finding 2023-001, internal controls over cash receipts. This was a significant deficiency. This finding has been resolved. And did you guys want me to go briefly over the finding?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Other than that, that is it. Does anyone have any questions over the financial statements?
There are no questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So at this time, we need a motion to consider the approval of the 2024 audit.
So moved.
Seconded.
Has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We left off on item E. Consider approval of the part-time employee benefit coverage.
So this is just a resolution that allows us to offer benefits for our part-time employees. And so it's very straightforward and simple.
Is there any
Questions?
questions? Your recommendation?
For approval, sorry.
So is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the part-time employee benefit coverage, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item F, consideration of and approval of a resolution proposing general obligation school bond ballot question and other matters relating thereto.
Okay, and Kylie is still with us, and I don't know if there's any questions from the board, but this will go over to the ballot for the November election. Kylie, is there anything else that we need to consider?
Yes, on page 4 of the resolution, there is a statement that says, whereas it is the intention of the board that with the approval of the issuance of general obligation school bonds and the maximum amount of $3,750,000, the general obligation debt service tax rate be $10.31. I just want to clarify that, this is stating the board's intention of a tax rate. It's a goal, but we ultimately can't predict the future. That tax rate is not a guarantee as we set that tax rate annually, and it's dependent on your tax base. Now, additionally, too, for the question itself on page 5, you'll see that the ballot question is quite open-ended and a bit vague. We do that by design so that it provides the district with max flexibility to be able to use the funds on what is needed. Those are the only things I wanted to point out on this resolution. You know, besides that, these are pretty standard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Any questions at all? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a
Approve.
motion? Okay.
Second.
Has then been moved and seconded for consideration of and approval of the resolution proposing general obligation school bond ballot question and other matters relating thereto. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I don't know if this one, if I can't recall, needs a roll call.
Does it need a roll call?
Persons.
Does it need a roll call? sir?
I think better safe than sorry.
Okay.
I think
Will.
on both, yeah, there is, if you notice upon roll call, the following members found present and I believe so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go with a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye, all those opposed say no. Vice President Legarreta,
Aye.
Member Garay,
Aye.
Member Marcus.
Aye.
Secretary Montes is absent, myself, aye, motion carries. We are going to be skipping item G, moving it to the end, and we'll move over to item H. Consider approval of student out-of-state travel, Hatch Valley Public Schools Team Summer Camp travel expenses. They will be at the expense of each team and their fundraising efforts.
Our teams always go in the summertime to different kinds of camps and some of them will be out of state. And so, you know, my recommendations for approval.
Okay,
So moved.
Seconded.
it has been moved and seconded for approval of the student travel out of state. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Item I, consider approval and adoption of policy advisories 261 through 262 graduation requirements. And this is a first reading, so we are actually not going to consider approval. Were there any discussion, anything to discuss?
I have a question specifically with the requirement of not with them eliminating algebra 2. I just, are 11th graders still gonna be given the SAT or is that going away also? I'm not sure. Is that gone after these 9th graders?
The SAT is still a requirement for students to take. Some of the major changes, as you mentioned, was the Algebra 2. It's no longer required,
Yes.
but we do have to offer it.
But
So-
I'm thinking, as a board, why wouldn't we make that a requirement? Because what's tested is not being taught. How fair is that to students that have to take that SAT? And I know the SAT has a lot of algebra too, a lot of algebra in there. So I'm not sure if that puts our students at a disadvantage to not have that algebra 2 requirement.
Mhm.
Because we can exceed that, correct?
Yes.
That's just my opinion. I don't know what you
Mhm.
guys are thinking, but I just feel if they're gonna, now if they're, I know if I'm taking the SAT and I'm not required to take algebra 2, I wouldn't take it, but then if I'm held
Those standards.
to those standards, what's being tested is not being taught, how fair is that to me?
Mhm. Some of the options we are going to be giving our students is probability and statistics and a transition to college course.
Couldn't we offer that also? Just have, make those 3, make algebra 1, geometry and algebra 2 requirements and then have them do.
The other 3.
Financial literacy. That's just my opinion. I just think it's setting up our students to for a disadvantage if we take I don't even know why they took it with that. I don't understand that
Doesn't
yet.
make sense.
There's
Does it?
there was a lot of talk at the state level on the Algebra 1, and one of the things that was coming up was that a lot of kids take like algebra and the content that they would normally take in Algebra 1 in like CTE classes. And so this was an attempt to try to give some more flexibility for them to be able to get that content, but through another class or another method. And that's why they pulled back on it.
But this is the first reading, but I would strongly recommend that, in my opinion, that as a board that we keep, or we make sure that Algebra 2 is a requirement for graduation for our Tetra Valley students. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I agree with that too. It seems like taking it away is kind of going
That's not a
backwards.
good.
Yeah. And it can be amended, right? That policy can be amended to take out that
Yes.
particular statement in there. Remove Algebra 2. Okay.
What I can do before next meeting, if that's okay, is do kind of a crosswalk on what standards are addressed that come out of Algebra 2.
Okay.
I know that there was some logic on all that. I don't know all the
Yeah,
details,
neither
but we
do I.
can definitely,
Yeah.
we can definitely go back and research some of that and see. Like I said, what I mentioned was what I know just off the top of my head, but we can dig deeper into it and have a discussion
Okay.
next month on that issue.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any other discussion?
that's the one that I felt very strongly about.
Item J, consider approval high school electives.
So with House Bill 171, which is what the policy advisories are focused on, we do have to have the board has to make a decision on 2 units of elective classes. And so with that, Ms. Brandy Olguin is here to present a recommendation for approval from the board to meet that requirement.
So before I present those, I do want to let you know there, we talked about some of the changes for graduation. And these don't go into effect until our new freshmen
Ninth grade,
come in.
sorry.
Yeah.
New ninth grade,
Mhm.
25, 26.
Yes, so they've identified 3 pathways, 3 options to demonstrate. It's not to demonstrate competency, but to be able to graduate from a New Mexico high school. The first is doing a crosswalk with our CTE classes. So for example, if a student takes media and they have to do something through language arts, through writing, or that sort of thing, then they could get CTE credit and their English credit. But to do that, you have to have a teacher that's certified to teach both of those. So it's kind of a complicated process, but the other pathway is that students demonstrate mastery through their test scores. So through PSAT, SAT, or and the New Mexico Science Readiness. Another option is to use the ACT work keys to demonstrate competency. So that's the second pathway. The third pathway is to complete a 3-course sequence in CTE, which includes a capstone class, which would be work-based learning. So if students complete 3 courses and their work-based learning, that will grant them the option to pass and not have to have mastery scores. The only thing with
Stone, do they have to present that in front of a team, in front of?
yes,
Right.
yeah, that's what would be required of our work-based learning. Our students are currently doing that are in work-based learning, so we're perfecting that. They're going to be giving their capstone presentations in the next couple of weeks, the ones that we do have in work-based learning. Also, our biliteracy SEAL students, that also qualifies as a capstone presentation. And then we have a group of students that have work experience, and they're also going to be currently doing a capstone presentation as well. And we're working on strengthening those rubrics and strengthening the criteria for that until it is required. Another caveat that comes with the first pathway I mentioned and the last pathway I mentioned is students can't have to get a C or better in all their English courses, their math courses, and their science courses. So they're raising that bar in order, if you're not going to demonstrate mastery, well, that now you have to get a C or better no longer a D is passing in those core classes. So what we are proposing for you to consider for the 2 additional units is a capstone course for students. Now, that could be a student that's taking dual credit courses that qualifies as a capstone course. And then that the work-based learning also qualifies as a capstone course. Our work experience is also a capstone course. And the other option our students would have if they weren't in that completer status would be for them to complete their senior year to complete a community capstone. So we're asking for one of the units to be a capstone course. So that ensures that our students are in alignment with the path 3 that we're doing.
But
So-
students are allowed to pick one of those pathways for graduation?
Currently, we offer, yes,
Yeah, they would. be
one
able
of
to
those
pick one
pathways, yes.
pathway.
Mhm.
But for those that pick pathway 3, you would like an elective as capstone.
Well, we want every senior to do a
Oh,
capstone
every-
regardless.
Oh, every senior.
Mhm.
So they would take that class but not have to do a presentation or? they
It would
have
be
to
a
get-
community-based capstone instead of a CTE capstone
Okay, community, so,
Mhm.
and then they would each senior would have to do some type of presentation
presentation.
to graduate.
Yes.
And how would that affect our sped students?
They could still complete a capstone, a
Okay. It
presentation.
would be a little.
It would be modified
some
and
predictions
it would have to
and-
be, yes.
And that's,
Mhm.
that's a lot of, because it's a big project,
It
and it's a
is.
lot of stress
Yes.
on
A-
seniors to
and-
begin with.
We would start their freshman year through advisory. So
Okay.
it would
Okay.
be
Or-
a 4-year
okay.
process where they would start gathering, because it's also like a portfolio, because we need writing samples, we need samples of work that they've done. So it's not just gonna be boom, your senior
And they
year.
have the option.
We would be preparing them their freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior
And-
year.
With the students having the option to do it in English or Spanish?
Our bilingual students for their
No,
biliteracy
any-
seal,
Not just the seal, but
Student.
just say
But
any student.
any
Let's say
student.
They're not seeking the biliteracy
Biliteracy
seal,
seal.
but let's just say I come in as a 10th grader and
Mhm.
I'm stronger in French, okay, let's just say French. Or another language, but usually English and Spanish, would they be able to do that in the language they feel more comfortable in, the capstone?
we are creating that criteria, so we would be
Okay,
able
I
to
would love
do
see-
that.
Make sure that
Mhm.
they can best demonstrate in the language they feel more comfortable.
Yes, sir.
Now, of course, if it's French, we may not have people that speak French, but the Spanish, I really think that would
Yeah.
Mhm.
alleviate a lot of that pressure on you to have to get up in front of a group of people and
And
it's not your
present.
first language
Right.
and it's for
Broken,
graduation.
broken English.
Like,
there.
with that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that
Okay.
would be, that could be considered.
Okay.
And what happens if you come in as a transferring student at
It's a lot of work.
11th grader?
11th grade, we'd work really hard your
Yeah.
11th grade and senior year to make sure you get that. There is a caveat in here to say that when students do come in, you can adjust their pathway.
Oh,
Yeah.
So say they were in a
Okay.
school that offered a business pathway, and since we don't offer a business pathway, we can do some finagling and there's some leeway there.
Okay,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
So they have thought of that. So the other, I know you had recommended algebra 1, algebra 2. But the other one we were thinking of was a personal finance literacy class. And right now we offer financial literacy in the math department, but they've always felt that that would be more appropriate in the social studies department. And the new graduation requirements do offer that as a possibility for a credit for social studies now. So we would, right now, not everybody's forced to take financial literacy. It's an option your senior year. But we would like our students to take it their junior year. And the reason is because when they get to their senior year, we're hoping they're getting into a work experience or work-based learning. And that would help them manage their finances. That would give them a heads up. In that class, they talk about loans and car payments, and they do a lot on taxes and that sort of thing, and budgets and making sure they're prepared. They touch the stock market. They just give them a whole bunch of different scenarios and things to do so that they know how to manage their money better. And so we felt if we offer that to make it a requirement, then everyone has to take that. And it's not just if you want to take it your senior year.
So we could require 4 classes, we could mandate, so algebra 2, the financial literacy, the geometry and algebra 1 then?
For
For
the science, for the math,
For the math?
for the math. Well, algebra 1 is a requirement,
And
so is geometry is a requirement.
I-
They are required for,
Leaning towards, that's gonna be algebra 2 would be the 3rd for sure.
okay,
If my opinion, and I just feel strongly about that. So then that other class that you're talking about could be required also then. If you feel strongly about that, could that be, or we have to give it as an elective?
So right now you have to have 24 credits
Yes.
to graduate.
Yes.
And so I think making another requirement, would that
Requirement.
mean that we'd have to go to 25 credits?
well, right now, we are above that because we offer more credits a semester. So we're at 29, we require 29,
Oh,
yeah.
And the minimum
Because
is
for
24.
24, it would be if we offer just six classes a
classes, yeah.
semester, but we were offering 8. This year we went to 7.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will do that crosswalk on the
Yes.
SAT to show the correlation between the standards and if they're gonna be missing any. And then I'll also do it with the
Correlation
other
with
classes.
Natural lit to SAT, the SAT,
Mhm.
and see the correlation between how much of that is actually,
Well, actually, the financial lit that we're proposing would be in the social studies now.
okay. But then for the math, what were you're saying something different from the.
So for the math, the sequence we were wanting to offer our students is algebra 1, geometry, and then their junior year, they get to pick between algebra 2, transition to college, probability and statistics, AP pre-calc, AP calculus. So they have 5 options. And they select 2 of those, they would select 2 of those options, one their junior year and one their senior year.
And they would have to take one of those 5 options.
Yes,
So they
Each
would
year.
have to have a math.
they would have to have a math course because they have to have 4 credits. They just the state gave us flexibility in what those 4 credits could
But if
be.
we still have those 3 credits, they could still have an elective for that one last credit. Instead of the 5, they choose out of the 4. Because algebra 2 would be required. You know what I'm saying? They still have-
If we do that.
Yes, we would still have,
They would still have those 5 options their senior year.
Yeah.
The only thing to consider is it helps us when middle school offers 8th grade out to their algebra 1 to their 8th grade students. And they haven't lately, but they're going to this year. So this freshman class will not have the opportunity, if we require algebra 2, they won't have the opportunity to take AP pre-calc and AP calc. They'll just be able to take AP pre-calc.
So if you didn't get a definitive answer on this tonight, would it set you back? Because I know you guys are
No,
preparing
because,
your master schedule and
yeah, no, because this is for the freshmen. So all freshmen right now are gonna take algebra
Okay.
1. So it doesn't affect us with our master
and hopefully
schedule.
algebra 2. at some
Because-
point in-
Yeah, right now our juniors, they have to take algebra 2. So it's like we're juggling these 2 sets of graduation requirements. Are you guys okay with the capstone course?
Is that-
Any thoughts
is
or
that what we're
questions?
gonna-
I like the idea of the capstone course. I definitely like that idea for sure.
So I'll get you more information on the math and the crosswalk with the SAT. Thank you.
If you all agree on the capstone course, we could have a motion to just consider approval of the capstone course at this time.
And
There's 2, so they're gonna delay the second one.
Delay the
Which
second one.
What's the delay for the second, which is?
Well, because you're wanting more discussion on algebra 2.
Oh,
Because in the policy advisory, they're taking algebra 2 out, that would become the other elective that they would have to take. Okay. Does that make sense?
not really, but I'll look.
which capstones are they truly, do they have an idea which ones they can truly want? You have all of them that you
Community.
want, there's,
That's why we're offering the option of a community capstone. So if they're not in a CTE pathway or doing work-based learning or work experience or getting their literacy seal, then they can do a community capstone.
So that's the elective you're asking for is the community capstone.
Just a
or
capstone.
Just a capstone.
Capstone umbrella.
Then they would have.
They have
options of
options.
just the capstone, yeah.
Or a dual credit class also counts as a capstone course.
Your recommendation, Mr. Chavez?
Just for approval, yes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Let's go ahead and state exactly what we're moving
Oh,
so
that's
that, since it's not
Just split
precisely
it.
what was,
It's getting split, right?
yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
split.
After
So
bonus.
we're moving to consider approval of
Capstone.
the capstone.
Elective.
Yes, so moved.
Seconded.
Has been moved in second to consider the capstone project. I'm not sure if this would have to be a roll call vote, but we'll go ahead and do it to be safe. Vice President Legarreta,
Aye.
Member Garay,
Aye.
Member Marcus.
Aye.
Secretary Montes is absent and myself, I. Motion carries, or at least part of the motion carries. We will be adding the capstone as one of the electives. Item K, consider approval of the 2025 auditor.
So moved.
No, this is the actual auditor that we're gonna pay for next year's audit.
Yes, this is for the new audit.
The new auditor.
We already approved the audit.
Wow.
The enchiladas are getting sold.
Sorry about that.
So we do have, we presented two yesterday, but we actually have three options to choose from. And so we, at the request of Ray and Chris, we went back and did a little bit of digging, a little bit of looking at least the two and seeing, what we could find out about them. And then we found out today that we can actually continue with the company that we've been working with because we were under the impression that it was 7 years, but it's actually 8 years. And so that's the other option. So we actually have three options to choose from. And so to that, Sheila's here to present information on all three.
Thank you. Good evening, board and President. I did speak to Mr. Gonzalez before we started. So I did confirm with our auditor and other school districts that we can use the auditor for 8 years. I reached out to Axiom, who is now called CLA, and did get a quote for next year. This is now CLA pricing, is a little higher than Axiom pricing, but that is an option. That would be a seamless option. Beasley and Mitchell is the proposed fee. I wrote Beasley at the top. They gave us a quote for pricing for 4 years. I did talk to several people about Beasley. I did look through some audits that they had done. I got very good reviews from them. I even spoke to our auditor about both of these auditors, and they said they had heard good things about both of them. He hadn't heard anything negative about either of them. I did look at the list of businesses, municipalities and districts that Fiero and Fiero have completed, and most were municipalities, not necessarily school districts. Beasley gave me a list of like 8 school districts that they've used, and most of them were smaller districts. So I actually felt more comfortable with that I think they'll know how to work with a small district. But they did get very good reviews. I did read through a Fiero and Fiero audit that they had done in 2023. I mean, it's very detailed, very extensive. It was on Española. So you're welcome to go pull that down out of OSA's audit search. Anyway, I'm not familiar with either of them personally, have not worked with them. Francisco has been amazing to work with. It is more expensive, but it would be the last year we could use them. So there are our three options. For ease of use, we would recommend staying with CLA, but price wise, Beasley would be our recommendation. It is the lowest price on the well, actually, yeah, it's the lowest. But they do seem to have more experience working with school districts than Bureau and Bureau.
That's $15,000. That's a substantial amount of
It
money.
is.
Is there any discussion or questions for Sheila?
Which, again, who do you, because you've been working with them, do you feel more comfortable? with
I do
them?
feel more comfortable with them, but again, we have the ability to continue using them. So that was the biggest question we had yesterday. And so we did confirm we can use them. So of course I would recommend that, but
Any other questions, discussion? We have do we have a motion to select one of them
I move that we follow Ms. Sheila's recommendation.
for CLA?
I second that.
It has been moved and seconded to follow recommendation of Sheila and go with CLA as our auditor for the coming year. And I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Vice President Legarreta,
Aye.
Member Garay,
Yes.
Member Marcus.
Aye.
Secretary Montes is absent, myself, aye. Motion carries. We'll use CLA for the last year.
thank you.
Any items, item number 5, any items for future meetings?
Oh, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just
You-
one. No, she's
She's
not,
not
we
on?
can go over,
Okay.
we can go over the item. So, item G.
Item G is the consideration for approval of the professional services contract between the Board of Education of Hatch Valley Public Schools and Castile Law LLC.
So I was notified from Laura that she's no longer going to be associated with the Cuddy Group, and we've used Cuddy Group for many years. And but she's going on her own, and so she wanted to submit a proposal for the board to consider. She'll be with Cuddy until the end of May. Starting June 1st, she'll go out on her own. My recommendation is to go ahead and keep her, but also keep Cuddy, the Cuddy Group as well, because we use different lawyers for different items. And so like, you know, the bond stuff and things that went, you know, I always go with Cuddy Group, you know, because they've got expertise in that. Laura, we've done a lot of work with Laura, just like things that come up with you know, either personnel or student issues or whatever. She's been very responsive. She gets back to us right away. My recommendation is to continue services with her, but not necessarily get rid of the Cuddy Group.
Mhm.
And just continue with who we have but it does mean an additional contract.
Do we have her costs?
She has it
Yeah,
here.
very
Yes, it's
nice.
towards the end. It's pretty standard.
It was in here.
It's under, it's Exhibit B. So her rates are $230 an hour, okay, and then everything else that falls under them.
So that's what you were paying now?
It's pretty, it's very similar, yes.
Any discussion?
I just think she's been a big help to our district.
So do I.
Last year, she's been awesome.
We have a motion to consider approval of her services.
And this is just for her right now, not for,
This is just for her, not for Cuddy, not for Walsh Gallegos.
okay.
The only change that would need to be made to this service agreement is I think she put April. but that would just need to be revised to June 1st.
Put April 7th.
That's good. On the 26th.
Yes,
Yeah.
it says April 7, 25 through April 7, 26.
Right, yeah, the
So
agreement
it would
need
change from
June 1st to.
June 1st to June.
Yes.
So we would have to mention that in the consideration when you make your motion. To
Start services.
start
June
servicing
1st.
on June 1st. If that is the direction we choose to go. So do we have a motion to consider approval of the professional services contract between the Board of Education and Castile Law beginning on June 1st,
So moved,
2025 to
2025 to June 1st, 2026?
so moved.
seconded.
It has been moved and seconded to consider approval. I'm gonna go ahead and do a roll call vote. Vice President Egreta,
Aye.
Member Garay,
Yes.
Member Marcus.
Aye.
Secretary Montes is absent. Myself, aye. Motion carries. Item number 5. Are there any items for future meetings that we need to put on the agenda at this time? Seeing none. Item number 6, the next regular board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May 14th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Just before we go though, make sure to reach out to NMSU board.
I did.
Okay,
Gonzalez.
as that's gonna coincide with us.
Yes.
Item number 7. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Has been moved to second. Those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Thank you.
We have cake.
Oh, my Lord.
Nobody can leave until they have a piece of cake.